So in my first video, I began by introducing the just general structure of a Teal paragraph. So again, when you are writing a full essay, you may have your introduction, your kind of body or middle section, and then your conclusion. So a Teal paragraph, when we talk about Teal paragraphs, they would essentially be that body middle paragraph. Or as I mentioned before, you could also have a paragraph, a Teal paragraph by itself, depending on the assignment. And Teal stands for, the acronym stands for topic sentence, evidence, analysis, and link. And I began by sharing about topic sentence, evidence. What I want to do in this video is finish with a little bit more about how to introduce that evidence before briefly discussing analysis and link to kind of round everything out. And so you can access this document as well, incorporating direct quotations in Canvas or in the description of this video. And what this does is it helps kind of it helps overview how to introduce a quote. So it's more than just sharing the quote. We actually need to introduce it correctly. And if you remember from the previous video, I talked about having a frame that gives enough context. We also just need to know generally how do we need to format the introduction of a quote, because you don't want a quote just standing alone as its own complete sentence. It needs to be introduced somehow. And that's essentially what this is about. And we call those signal phrases. Now, when we're incorporating a direct quote from another source into our own writing, we essentially have a three-part formula. We have the introduction of the quote, what we call the signal phrase. We have the quote itself, and then we want to analyze and explain that quote. And that's when we talk about Teal, the structure of our paragraphs, that's the A, that's the analysis of that evidence, okay? But this document is going to mostly share how to properly introduce a quote. And essentially there are three ways that you can do that. First, you can make a quote a part of your sentence's structure. And this is best whenever you have a short or partial quote. And you can see an example here. The author reveals Jim's fear about how his father would rage like a ravaging angel. And so in this case, this is a partial quote that just sort of gets integrated smoothly into the overall sentence structure. I'll point out to you as well that there is no comma before the quote is introduced. That's different than the second use here. Number two, use an introductory phrase that clearly establishes the relevance of the text. And this is whenever you have a speaker and some kind of verb that denotes their action of speaking or sharing the direct quote. So you can see this example. The author reveals how the tension is building when Jane says, comma, quote, you aren't the person I love, okay? And so when we have the speaker and the verb of speaking, that could be says, speaks, notes, states, asks, all kinds of different verbs you can use there. But when we have those, then you're going to use a comma before the direct quote. Again, you see that here. When her boyfriend calls her that night, he screams, comma, how could you do this to me? And so the speaker and their verb of communication, right? And a comma that's introduced. And then the third way that you can introduce a quote is by using a colon. You're going to use a colon to separate your sentence from the quotation if both are sentences. So if the introduction of the quote, the signal phrase, could stand alone as its own complete sentence, then you're going to use a colon. So here, Alex often struggles with his situation. I could just stick a period there and say that's the end of the sentence, okay? But if I'm using this to introduce a quote, then I need to use a colon, because a colon basically says, here's more information that follows, and then the quote itself, all right? It would not be correct in this sense to put a period here because I have a quote after, and I don't want a direct quote just standing alone as its own complete sentence, and that's why you use this method, right? Just a reminder that whenever you use a signal phrase, you want to try and add contextual information, and then here are a few other possible examples of signal verbs and phrases in order to kind of think through how could you introduce quotes and how could you introduce information. So that's kind of the last thing I wanted to state about the evidence portion of the Teal structure. So let's continue on with our presentation by looking at analysis. So analysis is the A in Teal, and this is also directly related to evidence or embedding quotes, because this is really the back portion of introducing that evidence. You need to actually analyze it. Don't just give a quote and then move on and hope that your audience can infer the significance of that or just assume they understand the significance of it. You need to be clear. You need to be direct. You need to explain and analyze that quote. Why is it important? So whenever you're analyzing in the Teal section of your paragraph, consider the following questions. First of all, if it's not immediately clear and you got to kind of try to put on new glasses, if you will, and read through the eyes of your audience, through the eyes of your reader, is it going to be immediately clear what that quote is communicating? Because if not, then part of analyzing really is just interpreting, right? Just explaining exactly what this means in context of the story in case it's not clear. But even more important than that, you want to make sure that it's clear what the significance, what the importance of this quote is in the overall story and how it supports the topic sentence and or your thesis statement, okay? Because all of your paper, if it's a longer paper, is really in support of your thesis statement, which is the argument of your paper, the unique claim you're trying to make. Or if you just have one individual paragraph, you're at least trying to use your evidence, the analysis of that evidence, to explain your argument or claim in the topic sentence. Because remember, a topic sentence is like a mini thesis if it's in the context of a larger paper. I also share Bloom's taxonomy. You may have seen something like this before, just as a reminder that really the goal in essay writing and analytical academic writing is to move beyond just observation, more than just sharing a quote and saying what the quote is. The interpretation part might be important, right? But that's still here at the bottom, the understand portion of Bloom's taxonomy. We really want to get to the analysis and evaluation of how does this fit into your overall argument, right? And ultimately supporting unique claims, right? Something that might not be immediately observable, but you're taking a unique approach to it. So you just want to keep in mind that while the interpretation portion of analysis might be necessary, it shouldn't end there. That really we want to get to higher levels of critical thinking and making sure that we are actually providing unique insight that maybe hadn't been considered by audience members or readers before. And then the last part of the Teal structure is the L, the link. And ultimately, it's going to do one of multiple things. It can connect to the backing or the argument. If you remember from the first video, I shared that, even though we're going to dive into thesis a little bit more in another video, that essentially we write a thesis with an ABC formula. A being the argument, B being the backing, like what is the methodology that the writer of whatever literary feature you're looking at, what is the methodology they use to communicate theme or whatever, or to make this so that you can make this argument. And then C is context, title, author, that sort of thing. And so when you have a link in your Teal paragraph, essentially you're wanting to go back and kind of connect to, how is this supporting the argument or the backing in your topic sentence, or if it's a longer paper, in your thesis as a whole. Additionally, if you're writing in a multi-paragraph essay, then you can use the link, the last section or last portion of a paragraph, of a body paragraph, of a Teal paragraph, to connect to your next paragraph. So if your next paragraph is moving on to a new, exploring or examining a different backing or a new argument, then you can connect to that new argument. Or at times your paragraph is just getting long, and so you just need to transition to a new paragraph for the sake of organization, but you're going to continue with the same argument. That's when you can use good transition words like additionally, furthermore, and that communicates I'm going to continue with the same ideas from previously. I just got more information, and for the sake of making my readers' eyes not too tired, I'm going to break it apart into another paragraph, right? And so those are all things that we can see with the link. So more or less, that's your Teal paragraph. I want to also draw your attention that you can find in the Canvas module or also in the link of this video as another sample to maybe help you visualize what a Teal paragraph might look like. Now, this one I actually put in context of an introductory paragraph. Okay, I've not covered that really in this video or the previous video, but just so that you can kind of see an introductory paragraph of a longer essay. And I put a couple body paragraphs. And so my challenge is for you to look at this paragraph and see if you can identify the parts of Teal within the paragraph. And as a guide to help you, you can also kind of look at the answers down there. Notice here that I have multiple pieces of evidence, okay? A Teal paragraph doesn't just mean one E, one evidence. It could be T.E.A.L, right? Every evidence needs analysis, but you could end up having multiple E's and A's in each paragraph in order to support your thesis and your topic sentences, right? In fact, that's what you want to do. The more evidence, the stronger your argument is going to be.